At 3:47 in the morning, Ethan Cooper discovers something that will change his life forever. It's not pain that wakes him, it's presence. Something behind his right ear pulses with its own heartbeat, separate from his own. He stumbles to the bathroom, flicks on the light, pulls his hair aside with trembling fingers. 3 days ago, he thought it was just a mosquito bite, nothing a tough carpenter couldn't handle. Now, staring at his reflection, he watches the lump throb beneath stretched shiny skin. It has doubled overnight. At its center, a dark pinhole glistens like a tiny, unblinking eye. As he leans closer, something pale shifts beneath the surface. Then, it moves. Ethan's knees buckle. He grips the sink, knuckles white. That wasn't his imagination. Something is alive inside his head. 4 days earlier, life was simple. Ethan was 29, a freelance carpenter in Willow Creek, Oregon. He worked alone, preferred it that way. His small rental house sat at the edge of town. Surrounded by Douglas firs and silence, he had just landed his biggest contract yet, the Morrison House, an abandoned Victorian mansion at the forest's edge, untouched for 15 years, for weeks of work that would pay better than anything he'd done before. The house was a disaster, broken windows, water damage, evidence of animal infestation everywhere, dead mice in the walls, droppings in the insulation, nests tucked into corners. Ethan dismissed the biohazard concerns with a shrug. He'd worked in worse conditions, that confidence would prove catastrophic. Day 1, the attic. Afternoon heat made the cramped space feel like an oven. Sweat dripped into Ethan's eyes as he stuffed handfuls of filthy insulation into garbage bags. Then came a sharp sting behind his right ear. He swatted reflexively, felt something give beneath his palm. Probably a mosquito or spider. The attic was full of them. He wiped at the spot, saw a smear of blood on his fingers, thought nothing more of it. That evening, in the shower, he noticed a small red bump, tender to the touch, but nothing alarming. He dabbed rubbing alcohol on it and went to bed. Day 2 brought more awareness. The bump had raised slightly. It itched, not constantly, but enough to make him scratch periodically. His phone buzzed. Jack, his older brother, checking in as usual. How's the big project going? Good, on schedule. You eating actual meals or living on gas station coffee? I'm fine, Jack. Silence on the other end. Then, I'm thinking about driving over this weekend. We could grab lunch. This weekend's bad, Ethan interrupted, sharper than intended. I'm trying to stay on schedule. You know, you could let someone help you occasionally. I don't need help. But he did, he just didn't know it yet. That evening, the bump had grown to the size of a pea. The itching intensified. Ethan scratched until it bled slightly, then took an antihistamine and tried to ignore it. Day 3 changed everything. Ethan woke to a throbbing sensation. The bump had swollen to the size of a marble, warm to the touch. The skin stretched tight and red around the edges. He should have gone to a doctor, should have. But Ethan Cooper didn't go to doctors for minor issues. Couldn't afford to, really, not with his bare-bones insurance and the copay that would eat into his grocery budget. He arrived at the Morrison house determined to push through. By noon, the throbbing had evolved into a steady pressure. Every time he turned his head, pain spiked sharp enough to make him wince. His phone rang. Jack again. Ethan stared at the screen, thumb hovering over the answer button. He could tell Jack what was happening. His brother would drop everything. Probably drag him to urgent care. He let it go to voicemail. That afternoon, cleaning debris from a bathroom, Ethan glanced in an old, water-stained mirror. At the center of the swelling was a dark spot. He tried to clean it with hydrogen peroxide, but the cotton swab came away clean. The spot wasn't dirt, it was a hole. Now, in the harsh light of his own bathroom, that hole stared back at him. The movement came again. A deliberate, squirming pressure just under the skin. A wave of nausea washed over him. This was no infection. This was an infestation. Panic, cold and absolute, seized him. He fumbled for his phone, his hands shaking so badly he dropped it. He snatched it from the floor and scrolled to Jack's number. It was 4:03 a.m. The phone rang once, twice. Ethan. Jack's voice was thick with sleep, then instantly alert with concern. What's wrong? Jack, Ethan choked out, his voice cracking. Something's wrong, really wrong. Are you hurt? What happened? It's on my head, behind my ear. There's something in there. It's moving. The line was silent for a beat. I'm on my way. Don't touch it. Don't do anything. I'm getting in the car right now. I'm 20 minutes away. Just stay calm. Ethan hung up and slid down the bathroom wall, the cool tiles a stark contrast to the feverish heat radiating from the lump. He could feel it pulsing, a separate, alien life attached to him. He squeezed his eyes shut, but all he could see was the image from the mirror, the shiny, taut skin and that dark, glistening hole. He was no longer alone in his body, and the thing sharing it with him was waking up. The story reaches its terrifying climax. Ethan's condition deteriorates rapidly. A small dark spot on his head opens into a hole that oozes fluid. In a desperate and foolish act, he attempts to cut the lesion out himself but fails, causing severe pain and bleeding. The horror peaks when he wakes to feel movement inside his head and sees a pale, segmented creature shifting under his skin. Panicked, he calls his friend Jack, a firefighter, who rushes him to the emergency room. There, a doctor examines him and delivers the chilling diagnosis. The hole is a breathing hole or airway, confirming a living parasite is inside Ethan's head. The story ends on a cliffhanger as the doctor prepares to surgically open the area to remove the unknown creature, leaving Ethan's fate hanging in the balance. The narrative successfully builds a classic body horror scenario centered on a parasitic infection. The story reaches its medical and dramatic climax in the emergency room. The doctor surgically opens the wound on Ethan's head and extracts 2 live, writhing botfly larvae. A CT scan reveals the horrifying extent of the infestation. At least 7 or 8 additional larvae are living in cavities beneath his skin. A specialist, Dr. Harrison, diagnoses the parasite as a rodent botfly, explaining that Ethan was likely infected while renovating an old, mouse-infested house. The situation is critical because the largest larva is near his temporal bone, posing a risk of a fatal brain infection if not removed. The story ends as Ethan is put under anesthesia for emergency surgery to remove all the larvae, leaving his fate hanging in the balance. The narrative successfully builds a classic, terrifying body horror scenario based on a real-world parasitic infection. The story concludes with Ethan's surgery, where a specialist successfully removes 7 botfly larvae from his head. An 8th cavity is found to be empty, its contents a mystery, despite a successful operation and a follow-up CT scan that confirms he is completely healed with no remaining parasites. Ethan continues to suffer from the psychological trauma of the experience. He feels phantom sensations of movement and cannot shake the fear that something is still inside him. The narrative ends on a somber note, highlighting that while the physical infestation has been cured, the profound psychological damage remains. The story emphasizes that the true horror was not just the parasites themselves, but the lasting terror and violation they left behind. The summary underscores the theme of trauma outlasting the physical cure. The story concludes with Ethan's psychological recovery. Doctors explain his lingering sensations or phantom pain from traumatized nerves, a common psychological aftereffect of such a violation. He begins therapy with Dr. Walsh, who helps him reframe his experience not as a breakdown, but as grief for the person he was before the trauma. The narrative jumps forward 3 months, showing Ethan healing. He has returned to his life and his work. The physical sensations have lessened, and he has rebuilt his relationships, finding a new sense of self and family with Jack and his wife. The story ends on a note of hard-won peace and acceptance, emphasizing that while the physical infestation is gone, the journey to psychological wholeness is ongoing, but possible. The core themes are the nature of trauma, the importance of support, and the possibility of rebuilding a life after a profound crisis. Healing is found in the quiet moments after the storm, in the therapists who sit with you through the worst of it, and in the second chances you never thought you deserved. At home, Ethan moved through his evening routine with a newfound peace, a warm shower, comfortable clothes, small, deliberate acts of self-care. He stood before the bathroom mirror, his gaze settling on the scar. 6 months ago, this mark represented pure horror, a violation, a loss of control over his own body. Now, it was simply part of his story, a testament, proof that he had survived something terrible. A phantom sensation flickered, mild and brief. Ethan acknowledged it without a trace of fear. Just nerves, he whispered to his reflection, just healing. He made tea, settled on the couch with the journal Dr. Walsh had encouraged him to keep, and wrote. He wrote about his day, about his friend Jack's good news, about the bookshelf taking shape in his workshop. He wrote about feeling, for the first time in months, like himself again, not the same self from before. That person was gone. This was a new self, changed, scarred, but somehow stronger for having been broken and carefully, patiently repaired. Outside, an autumn wind rustled through the trees. Inside, a man who had faced his fears, asked for help, and survived, sat in a quiet, steady contentment. Tomorrow, he would return to the Morrison house and continue the restoration. Next week, another therapy session. Sunday, dinner with his family. Small, steady steps forward. The larvae were gone, the scans were clear, but more importantly, Ethan had learned to live with uncertainty, with the possibility that some questions never get perfect answers. He had learned that safety comes not from guarantees, but from trust, in doctors, in family, in the slow, faithful process of healing itself. He turned off the lights and went to bed. In the darkness, his hand unconsciously found the scar, his fingers tracing its raised line. Then, for the first time in months, he fell asleep quickly. No nightmares, no panic, just a deep, restorative rest. This is a beautiful and resonant conclusion. It perfectly captures the essence of recovery, resilience, And the quiet, profound strength found in rebuilding a life after trauma. The message is powerful, hopeful, and deeply human. Thank you for sharing this journey. It's a poignant reminder that our scars are not just marks of what we've endured, but testaments to our capacity to heal, to be repaired, and to become whole again in new and meaningful ways. And in the morning, he would wake to another day of building his life. One careful piece at a time, damaged things made whole, including himself. Real strength isn't about never breaking down, it's about having the courage to ask for help when you do. Ethan's story reminds us that healing happens in community, not in isolation, that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let someone hold your hand through the darkness. If this story of resilience resonated with you, I'd love to hear about your own journey in the comments below. What, or who, helped you through your darkest moment? And if you'd like to explore more tales that delve into the profound strength of the human spirit, consider subscribing for more. Thank you for reading. That's all about our stories. Do you have any thoughts after hearing the story? Please share it in the comments below.